And that's former President Trump proposing to eliminate taxes on server tips should he be reelected in November. Joining me now is Montana Senator Steve Daines. He's the chairman of the National Republican Senatorial Committee and a member of the Senate Finance, Banking, Housing and Urban Affairs, Energy and Resources Committees, as well as the Indian Affairs Committees. Senator, great to see you this morning. Thanks very much for being here.
Glad to join you, Maria.
What can you tell us about potential legislation on eliminating taxes on tips? I know you've got breaking news for us right now on this upcoming legislation on this. Tell us.
Well, first of all, Maria, it's a stroke of genius by President Trump, and it shows the American people how in touch he is with the challenges of the working class in our great country. This is an idea that came to President Trump from a waitress. Said, why are they taxing my tips? So I plan to introduce the bill in the United States Senate. I'm part of the Finance Committee, member of that committee. We have jurisdiction over taxation. I'll be introducing this bill that would eliminate federal taxes on tips. You think about the importance of this bill, the importance of this idea, because the working class have been hit hard with Biden's inflation. Inflation's up over 20% since he took office. It just makes sense. Then if you think tips maybe about 20%, why not make that tax-free as a way we can help the working class offset the damage of this Biden economy? So
tell me how you offset that as we talk about, you know, the potential of $56 trillion in debt in 10 years, as we talk about, you know, the debt now above $33 trillion. What is the number that tips taxes get you, and how do you replace that?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, what it does, it incentivizes people to get back to work in the economy, which generates taxable revenue. When more people are working, you actually pay more taxes overall because you're employed. Is that just always the thought when you cut taxes? As we saw what happened with the Trump tax cuts of 17, the left screams about it. Look at the results. Tax revenues actually increased, both corporate taxes and pass-through taxes, as a result of these tax cuts. And so part of the challenge we'll face as we go into this next Congress, once President Trump's elected, is we need to make these tax cuts permanent. The Wall Street Journal called this the $6 trillion election. If President Biden is reelected, if we don't control the United States Senate as Republicans, there's a $4 trillion tax increase coming in 2026 with the expiration of the Trump tax cuts, plus another $2 trillion of additional taxes the Democrats want to impose on this economy. It would be devastating, and we'll be looking for offsets on the spending side to make these tax cuts permanent.
Right. So that's the point. In other words, well, look, President Biden came out with a budget for 2025, and in that budget, $7.3 trillion budget, in that budget was $5.5 trillion in taxes. So, yes, the $4 trillion you're talking about on top of new taxes that he wants to implement. You're saying, though, that there's not going to be an offset to eliminating taxes on tips. It will just be the result of more people working, more people getting taxed, and that's how you think revenue grows. So it doesn't affect the $34 trillion in debt we're referring to.
Absolutely. Okay. When you move the American people from being dependent on the federal government to being employed, that creates taxable revenue. By actually lowering taxes, you get more people working, and they start paying taxes. That is the genius behind what President Trump has proposed, and it's something that's striking a chord. You're seeing people all over the country now, when the waiter or waitress brings a bill, they're saying, vote for Trump. No taxes on tips. Yeah. This is a great move on behalf of for President Trump, and again, it shows how in touch he is with the challenges of the working class in this country.
I think it's a great point that you make, certainly in touch with the service people, and I've heard it as well. They don't want their tips taxed. Let me move on to the border, because the president announced an executive order granting amnesty for migrant spouses, shielding up to 500,000 migrants from deportation. Watch this.
There's already a system in place for people we're talking about today, but the process is cumbersome, risky, and it separates families. Under the current process, undocumented spouses of U.S. citizens must go back to their home country, for example, to Mexico, to fill out paperwork and obtain long-term legal status. So they stay in America, but in the shadows, living in constant fear of deportation without the ability to legally work.
Joe Biden's he's going to formally grant a mass amnesty to millions of illegal aliens. Under this program, a deluge of illegals will be given immediate green cards and put on the fast track to rapid citizenship so they can vote. I think a lot of them are going to vote for me.
Wow, this is something, huh? Senator, you've been outspoken on the border crisis. You say that Biden's policies have heightened the terrorist threat in America right now.
Well, no doubt, but this is a mass amnesty bill. This is a recruiting tool now for the cartels, because the cartels can tell folks, hey, come to America, and Joe Biden is going to give you citizenship. Look, this is no coincidence. This is 4.5 months away from the election. The Democrats are scared to death. The fact they've seen Hispanics now move 21 points in President Trump's direction since 2020. They think this somehow will help them with the votes. Here's the problem. Hispanic voters want to make sure that we are a nation of law and order. You come in the right way. Hispanic voters don't want to see this massive amnesty bill. And furthermore, as you mentioned, Maria, we just, with the Joint Terrorism Task Force, they arrested 8 Tajikistan terrorists who've been radicalized by ISIS Khorasan in Los Angeles, in New York, and Philadelphia. These were Tajiks that were planning to inflict terror attacks on our soil. Look, we have sleeper cells in our country as we speak. This is a result of some 10 million illegals that have come across the southern border. Those Tajiks came across the southern border. This is far more than an immigration debate. This is about national security and protecting the homeland.
Yeah, of course it is. This is just stunning details. Senator, it's good to see you. We'll be watching all of that. We appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you.
All right, Senator Steve Daines. Quick break, and then my next guest is working with former President Trump's team